One Nation has dipped in the polls, and the Libs think they're slick copying and pasting Pauline Hanson's work, but if you're not voting for One Nation right now, then you're not Australia first. Because what other options do you have? Australia right now is at a real turning point where we could either become a great nation or a shithole. So welcome back to the LM Show. And before we get into this video, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell for more videos like this. It means a lot to us over here. It's the #1 thing keeping us independent, and we're now on Instagram, so go check us out over there. Now let's get into it. So like on TikTok, watch this.
Now, Resolve poll out tonight in the 9 papers. It'll be in the actual papers tomorrow. Small dip for One Nation. They're at a primary of 22% compared to 24% in this poll last month. The coalition is up 1 point to 23%. They've nudged just ahead of One Nation. And things are up a bit for Labor. They've lifted on primaries from 29% last month to 32%. So some positive news for the government.
Yeah, well, there are always different polls, Peter, but our support for One Nation has tracked along fairly consistently, perhaps bounced around a little bit less than most. These are the latest figures here. So One Nation and Labor for the first time at level. Remember the coalition, when they got level with One Nation, we thought, will this last? Look at this, 27 each. What's interesting about this is Labor was 34.5 at the last election. So 7.5% or a fifth of their support since that election is gone. One Nation up 2, which is a pretty significant movement in one poll. The concern for the coalition is it's stagnant. Yes, it's steady, but it's really stagnant, and they're not getting the pickup when Labor lose vote, which would be crucial to them. If you add the 3 to the coalition instead of going to 2 to One Nation, suddenly they're a lot closer together. So that's the concern out of this poll. The Greens, the highest we've had in Sky News polls as well.
The extreme left in this country are pulling their favourite card in the upcoming Farrer by-election. It's the Trump card, and I mean that literally. Left-wing advocacy group Get Up has raised more than $400,000 for an anti-One Nation campaign, plastering leader Pauline Hanson across billboards, TV commercials, radio, you name it, linking her to US President Donald Trump, saying, keep Trump politics out of Australia. According to the Sydney Morning Herald, the group, which grew by more than 100,000 people last month alone, is aiming to spend at least $600,000 by the time polls close, eclipsing its entire 2025 election budget. James,
So for a lot of us on the right, One Nation is a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. Their policies align with the issues that are happening in Australia at the moment and have great policies about remedying these issues. They did really well in South Australia last month. They gained some popularity, but now they've hit a bit of a dip. But we need to make sure that they're on the constant rise, because what are your other options? Let's go over them. So first, Labor. Now, I feel like we don't need to go too in depth with them because we've been living under them since 2022. But from their policies, the best one that I can see is a 5% home deposit scheme for first-time home buyers, which sounded good for the youth of Australia. However, they opened this to permanent residents. So basically, just completely wreck the policy by allowing people who just got here to buy homes at lower rates than the youth of Australia. So that went down the shithole. Now let's move on to the Libs. So going through their policies, they do look quite good. However, they're not as harsh as I would personally want them. And a real deal breaker for me with the Libs is Angus Taylor voting yes on the ASIO amendment bill, cracking down on terrorism, which in reality is taking away our civil rights. Go check it out. It's really, really shit. But there's a lot of distrust with the Liberals. Whilst they talk about Australian gas and wanting to continue that, while they talk about accelerating approvals to unlock more housing supply, I think it's very much signaling in the direction that many of us on the right want to go down. However, the underlying distrust for the Libs due to their relationship with Labor and due to their actions, especially recently, really does not support the policies that they are trying to implement and that they say they will. And adding to this, the National Party. Look, they say that they're the future of regional Australia. However, I think anyone who's attached to the Uni-party and who was obviously accepting the actions of Angus Taylor due to them still being the coalition, I'm not very fond of. Now let's take a look at the Greens, because they're the highest among the youth vote of about 33%, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions around them. You've got people like Abby Chatfield supporting them, and they look, at a glance, they look like they're for the environment, and you know, who wouldn't be for the environment? But it's very much that holier than thou attitude, and especially in this generation, which is my generation, it's very much of that mindset of let's look out for humanity and oh god. But let's really get into this and debunk all the things that the Greens are saying and what their policies really are, because I can tell you right now, they're very much not for the Australian people. But let's take a look at the Greens policies, because they are so illogical and impractical, it's seriously not funny. So the first one, creating a government agency to build 610,000 homes over 10 years to rent or sell at below market rates. Okay, well, the numbers just don't back that. A roughly 300K to 500K build, like you're looking at, what, $300 billion project? Well, and they've only projected, it says here, $28 billion. And in a country that already has construction bottleneck and tradie shortages flagged by the ABS, like, this is completely unrealistic. And on top of that, over 90% of housing in Australia is delivered by the private sector. So if the government starts undercutting that market, you risk slowing down this very system that actually builds a home. And we've seen this before with schemes like the Pink Bat scheme, and that rush large-scale government rollouts can blow out on costs and under-deliver. And then you can't ignore the broader context either. Their whole welcoming refugees with dignity, well, that approach feeds directly into the demand. And if you got 310,000 net arrivals a year, which Albanese maintained for what, 3 years? And if you maintain that going forward, that pressure on housing doesn't magically disappear. So you've got massive demands and a plan that already doesn't stack up on supply. Now let's take a look at their climate and energy policy. And based on that housing plan, I don't have much hope. All right, let's take a look. Net zero by 2035. Okay, 75% emission cut by 2030, 100% renewables by 2030. And then you've got a fossil fuel ban on no new coal, oil or gas projects, cancelling exploration permits. How is anyone voting for these people? Oh my God. So you're cutting domestic production while the demand still exists. Okay, this country isn't switching overnight, so what happens? You rely on other countries. And look, what's happening right now with the fuel crisis, it's evident. And look, coal and gas are a massive part of Australia's economy. We've got tens of billions of dollars in exports per year, and it's a key to how we operate globally. Now let's take a look at their defense. Okay, cancel AUKUS submarines, scrap 1A2 tanks and Black Hawks, shift to drones and missiles, cut defense spending by 1% every year. My God, Labor sounds like a far-right extremist group compared to these lefties. Jesus, defunding the ADF. What planet are you on? Seriously, you might as well send the invites to China right now. AUKUS, whether you like it or not, is about positioning Australia in the Indo-Pacific, strengthening alliances and long-term capability. You scrap that. You change Australia's entire strategic position, and then you're removing heavy armor and aviation capability on top of that. And all of this just to save money at the peril of our safety. Now take a look at this policy. End the occupation in Palestine. The hypocrisy. They're condemning the US involvement in the Iran war. However, they're also talking about wanting to free Palestine. So are you against foreign wars or are you for them? Because if you want to free Palestine, you are going up against Israel. And if you think that Australia's military can take on Israel alone, you're dreaming. So you want to send our troops after defunding the Defence Force to Palestine to free a whole bunch of people who aren't even Australian. Got it. And if you think that you're going to get into the Palestinian-Israeli conflict without putting troops on ground, you're dreaming again. On top of that, in this very controversial topic of Israel, they also want to stop all military exports. Let's see how many skeletons come out of the closet when you do that. No, guys, how is anyone voting for the Greens? Especially young people, which is my demographic. I'm mortified. Because is it because people like Abby Chatfield supports them? Or is it because they present themselves as the good guys, the fair and environmental humanitarian option? Because when you actually break it down, the numbers don't add up, the execution doesn't stack up, and the real world impacts raises serious questions. You've got massive government spending, huge structural changes to the economy, defense cutbacks, and ongoing pressure from population growth, and all at the same time. So if you're looking at this and you're still backing them, supporting those policies, please let me know why. This isn't even the left anymore. This is Looneyville. What part of this actually works? Please let me know in the comments. So look, from the Uni-party to the Greens, it's all sounding very good. But now let's go for a rant. So for me, if you're not siding with one nation, you're not Australia first. One Nation is putting our national sovereignty first. Every single other options, like the Greens or the Libs or Labor, which is the Uni-party, let's be honest. If you vote for the Liberals, you're essentially voting for Labor. Every other party does not care about the Australian people and will end up having Australia looking like a third world shithole. So One Nation, we've got to get them in. If you want Australia to be sovereign, if you want Australia to not be dependent on the whims of the US, because I know a lot of you lefties hate being at the whims of the US, and if you want to end that, you got to prioritize national sovereignty. That's the only way to go. There's really no other option. They're going to end mass immigration. They're going to deport illegal immigrants. They're going to fire up nuclear energy. They're going to get rid of this net zero money hole. They're going to fix the housing crisis and all of these problems that we are complaining about. Well, they have policies to fix. Can you say the same for the Greens? Can you say the same for the Libs? Can you say the same for Labor? No. And for anyone talking about the Libs bringing their ICE-style immigration crackdown plan, they're just trying to win over your vote because they know a lot of people in Australia feel more comfortable under the main two-party system. So what they're doing is stealing One Nation's popular points and trying to get you to go back over the two-party system. Don't believe it. It's all a manipulation. If we don't make this a turning point in Australia at the next election, say goodbye to our laid-back culture, say goodbye to uncrowded beaches, say goodbye to Christianity being our most popular religion, say goodbye to all of that. Seriously, we've been following down the same road for 40 goddamn years, and now we're at the end of it. Well, the Australian dream will be dead and long gone if we don't make a change fast. And for anyone who doesn't believe me, go have a look at the UK. Go have a look at their immigration rates. Go have a look at their population. Go have a look at their infrastructure. That's not handling their population. Go have a look at their homelessness crisis. Go have a look at the English people who are fed up with their corrupt governments selling themselves to other nations. The English UK is gone. So if you don't believe me, go look up what's happening in their country. And if you want Australia to become that, then you're in the wrong space of the internet. And just adding to this, people who aren't understanding the severity of these things, in New South Wales, we've had 14 known cases of child marriages. I'm going to say that again. 14 known child marriages in the state of New South Wales alone. How many of you guys live in New South Wales? Are you guys okay with that? That's the severity of these things. I'm not just saying that to spark anger. I'm not saying that to certify that I'm on the right. I'm not saying that for nothing. And people are still saying that One Nation is racist. People are still not siding with One Nation. And people are still siding with Labor, who knows about these child marriages and are doing nothing. And another point here, remember that $20 million ad to tell us to take off our roof racks? Whilst we have companies like Little Wings who provide transport from rural areas of Australia to cities for sick children, well, they've had to cut back 40% of their work due to an increase of 10 grand per week because of the fuel crisis, and that company has not received any aid from the Australian government. Don't you think 10% of that $20 million budget could have gone towards the children of Australia in rural areas who are sick and need to go to cities for treatment? That example alone is evidence enough that this government does not care. And this is why it annoys me so much when politicians and even the people of Australia sometimes, because everyone has to vote, when everyone gets caught up in this nonsense of Albanese said what to the Premier of da-da-da, what did he say? What t-shirt did he wear? What to Pauline Hanson? She called someone a bitch. That's why it annoys me so much, because it's all a distraction of what's actually happening. And when it comes down to the baseline, to the most dependent people being the children of Australia, when they are harmed, that's my breaking point. And right now they are being harmed. Whether it's non-access to vital services, whether it's being married to adults because the government failed to crack down on extremism growing in the streets of places like Sydney, they failed after the Bondi attacks to combat this extremism. So right now, if this video alone isn't a wake-up call to anyone who's still voting Labor, if this video alone isn't a wake-up call to anyone who's still voting for the Greens, then I'm going to safely assume that everything that I laid out in this rant you're happy with. So if that's you, go put Labor #1 in the 28 election and watch everything that's happening right now get bigger and harder to control. And if you're watching what's happening in the UK and you're happy with that, well, that tells a lot. So that's all for today's video, guys. We went on a pretty big rant. Let me know in the comments whether you like these rants or you just want me to keep it more concise. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you all in my next one. Thanks, guys.